Welcome everyone, I'm Archit Tashadri. Thanks for joining us. This is WION, World is One News. This is a special broadcast on the one-year anniversary of the Holy Artisan Bakery attack in Dhaka. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll focus on what's changed in Bangladesh since the deadly terror attacks. Here's exactly what happened a year ago. On July the 1st, 5 terrorists shot and killed 20 hostages, mostly foreigners, as well as 2 bakery staff and 2 police officers in Dhaka. It happened at a bakery which is popular with diplomats, an area where many of the rich and wealthy of Dhaka hang out. The terrorists came in with pistols, machetes and crude bombs. Later on, the 5 gunmen were also shot and killed. The attack in Dhaka was one of the worst terror attacks on Bangladesh soil. The government of Bangladesh has since launched a massive crackdown after the attack. They've nabbed extremists, their sympathizers, and blocked their financial resources. So exactly a year since the deadly terror attack, how safe is Bangladesh? And what exactly is the government doing to stop such future attacks? Here are our guests tonight for the special discussion. We have the head of the Bangladesh Center for Terrorism Research, a fellow from Dhaka, Shafkat Munir. Also in Dhaka, we have our chief, Saad Hamadi, and on the phone from New Delhi, we have Shantan Mukherjee, a Bangladesh security analyst. Thank you to all of our guests. We'll get to you in just a moment, but first, a report. A year after the bakery attack, families in Bangladesh are worried about some of the children who have disappeared, either into a secret state facility or radical outfits. Saad Hamadi explains.
Where I stand today marks the horror of a grisly terrorist attack that had killed at least 20 civilians, mostly foreigners, last year. The Islamic State claimed responsibility for the attack. In a pictorial release, ISS media outlet published images of 5 Bangladeshi youths who had entered the Holy Artisan Bakery just behind me on the evening of July 1. The cafe attack was an eye-opener for many Bangladeshi families. It brought home a disturbing trend. There are increasing reports of people disappearing or going missing. While some of them are reportedly joining jihadist outfits, some are being picked up by security forces. The reason is not clear. More than 140 people have disappeared since July 2016 in Bangladesh. Police told WION that some of these individuals have joined terrorist outfits. Security forces have carried out at least 12 anti-terrorist operations in which 46 people either committed suicide or were killed. 54 persons, including police, were injured in these operations. Since the Dhaka cafe attack last July, the modus operandi of security forces at combating terrorists have changed in Bangladesh. Several youths have gone missing from their homes, and security forces have killed some they suspect as terrorists in operations. I'm now at the Bangladesh Police Headquarters in Dhaka to find out exactly what efforts have been made in this one year and what results have been derived.
Almost 46 people have been killed during these operations, but they're not the public. They may be their fellow terrorists or maybe their families. We have communicated with the parents and the concerned universities or the educational institutions that the students who are absent more than 10 or 15 days, so they have to report it, they have to communicate with their parents, and the parents must have to communicate with their local police stations for the further information, or just to inform police that their children or their relative, they are missing for that days. After reporting as missing, they actually joined to the unauthorized organization.
But many disappearances and killings of individuals are not confirmed with links to terrorism. Many families complain about their dear ones being picked up by plainclothesmen identifying themselves as members of security forces in Bangladesh. Human rights organization Adhikar tallied the number of such disappearances at 91 last year. 2016 marks the highest number of such disappearances in 8 years.
After Holy Artisan attack, we saw this type of incident. Some people abducted by the law enforcing agencies from house or road. Some young people missing. Some people think they are joining extremist group. Sometimes we heard some information that some people abducted from their house and few months or few days after some people free. but they don't say anything about the incident, where they are kept, who kept them. They don't disclose that things. Always they are in fear. After Holy Artisan incident, some people arrest or some people abduct by law enforcing agencies only for suspicion. This is another problem. And sometimes law enforcing agencies show they arrest these people yesterday evening, but actually they are kept maybe 2 months or 1 month before.
Khan's remark resonates with what the father of missing 27-year-old Imam Hussein shares. Hussein is among 3 youths who disappeared on June 3 this year.
দিনে দুপুরে দিনের বেলায় কে নিয়ে কাহারা এই কাজ করছে জানি না। আমার ছেলেদেরকে উঠে নিয়ে গেছে, 2টা ছেলে। আমার ছেলে আরেকজন হাসান নামে এক অফিসে চাকরি করে। একজন 9টার সময় উদয় হয়ে গেছে, আরেকজন 2জন 5:30টার দিকে আর নাই। আর যদি তারা যদি কোনো অন্যায় কাজ করেই থাকি যাইতো, তাহলে তো 3জন একসাথে যাইতো। 3জনের বন্ধু একসাথে চাকরি করে। এই অবস্থায় কে কাহারা কোন সংস্থা নিয়ে গেছে এটাই আমি বুঝতে পারতেছি না। আজ পর্যন্ত জায়গার থানায় 2-3 বার গেছি, তবে বিভিন্ন জায়গায় গেছি, তারা কইতে খুঁজতেছে, দেখতেছে, এতটুকু বলতেছে।
Imam was supposed to return to his workplace, Telex Limited, an IT company in the building behind me, to break his fast that evening. His father fears that he may have been picked up by some state agencies. Police told WION that investigation into Imam's disappearance is ongoing, but they were yet to make any progress. Investigators say some anti-terror cases recorded with only one-word names and no further detail have made investigations difficult to close. As Bangladesh grieves 1 year of the horrifying terror attack, concerns over the disappearances have become alarmingly two-pronged, where the line between youths joining radical outfits or being picked up by security forces are largely blurred. In Dhaka, Saad Hamadi, WION.
All right, to get perspective on this story, let's first go to our guest here in New Delhi. We have Shantanu Mukherjee, a Bangladesh security analyst, to get perspective. Thank you for joining us. Question to you real quickly with regards to this. A year later, hard to believe that it's already been this long. Let's talk about that. What needs to be done to make sure this doesn't happen again? Shantanu? Shantanu Mukherjee, if you can hear us, we are now live. I wanted to ask you a question with regards to the attack. What's the latest in terms of what needs to be done? It's been a year. We've seen what's happened, one of the worst attacks on Bangladesh soil. What the government needs to do to make sure such things don't happen again? All right, we're having some technical issues. Let's come back to Shantanu in just a moment. Let me go over to Saad Hamadi. Saad, you've been there on the ground since this story broke, covering all angles of this. You've talked to locals, you've talked to officials. I mean, what is the government's response there? How has the government perhaps changed in the way it deals with terror outfits? Saad?
Archid, the modus operandi of these anti-terrorist operations have changed largely since July cafe attack last year. The anti-terrorist force over here, the counterterrorism and transnational crimes unit, says that they have dismantled the radical outfits in the country to an extent that another Holy Artisan bakery attack will not be possible of that scale or nature. While the government maintains that they have become stronger than the previous incidents and they have taken lessons from these previous incidents, it is yet to be tested or seen as regards to this kind of terrorist attack when they take place. But to point out here is that since the Holy attack in July, there has not been any further terrorist attack that has been carried out in the country. In fact, more anti-terrorist operations have gone on since the period, and they have killed a number of suspects that they consider to be members of the Neo Jamaatul Mujahideen Bangladesh, which is a local outfit working in allegiance with the Islamic State.
All right, let's see if we have Shantanu back on the discussion to continue this conversation. Shantanu, if you can hear us, question to you regarding this. It's been a year. Hard to believe that it's been 12 months. What exactly should happen in terms of evaluating the security situation there in Bangladesh to prevent repeat attacks?
Well, the situation is definitely disturbing, and it completes 1 year today. And we have seen several terror attacks soon after that. And first this happened, and strangely on the 7th itself, there was no deterrence on part of the security agencies because they attacked in Mymensingh or Kishorganj, another Eid congregation, killing some on the 7th, so barely 6 days after. That means, number one, the intelligence does not seem to be alive and kicking, which needs to be stepped up. Number two, these radicalization programs and disappearance, that needs to be checked. Maybe they need to call the vigilant groups or the civil societies, take into account. Alone police cannot handle this. Because in that artisan cafe case, some of the parents, they knew that the children have disappeared, and they must have suspected their destination. They had gone to Syria, the ISIS headquarters, to fight with the rank and file, but yet they did not think it fit to report. That awareness must be increased among them, that any disappearance, any suspicious movements must be reported. You just said since July last year, 140 have gone missing.
Right.
And this is quite a large number out of 170 million people. And that needs to be tracked. So the intelligence and the counter-terror force have to be very. Now I also heard saying about the human rights thing. Now if you are handling anti-terror operations of that magnitude, then definitely the people would be picked up, they would be interrogated, some by bona fide mistake, inadvertent mistake, error of judgment. Some of the innocents may also be roped in. But that margin, that leeway has to be given to achieve an optimum level of anti-terror operation. This is what the scene is in Bangladesh.
All right, we'll come back to you in just a moment. Let me now go over to a research fellow in Dhaka. Let's go to Shafkat Munir, who's also there on the ground. Shafkat, thank you, sir, for joining us. We appreciate it. In terms of the disappearances specifically, let's focus in on that. You know, the fact that so many of these youth have gone missing, perhaps the families know about that. I mean, do we suspect that perhaps they're being bred to lead out other terror attacks in Bangladesh? What are your thoughts?
Thank you. I think we have to take the disappearances very seriously, as Mr. Mukherjee has also stated. Especially, we need to investigate whether some of these missing youth are joining existing terrorist organizations or trying to go abroad, or have already been co-opted for being trained for a future operation. I think this is something we have to find very expeditiously and investigate very properly. And this is an issue that Bangladesh just cannot afford to take lightly.
All right. In fact, earlier on, we spoke to one of the Munirul Islam chief. Our correspondent, Saad Hamadi, spoke to him. Let's listen to a snippet of that conversation.
I'm joined by the Counterterrorism and Transnational Crimes Unit's Chief Munirul Islam. Mr. Munir, thank you for joining us. If you could tell us what efforts have been made in this 1 year and what results have the law enforcement agencies derived?
We have taken number of steps to prevent such an attack and to identify and arrest those who were directly or indirectly involved in this attack. So we have conducted a number of preemptive operations which killed around 65 terrorists all over the country during operation, and the number of arrestees also, I think it will exceed 100 this time. They were the members of Neo-JMB who was responsible for Holy Artisan attack. And apart from this counterterrorism operation, we have campaigned against terrorism, and the Honorable Prime Minister of Bangladesh, she asked the people after Holy Artisan attack to be united against terrorism, and as a result we have seen that more than 99% people were united against terrorism, and they expressed their hatred against terrorism. As a result, we think that we have been successful in counter-radicalize those who were already radicalized. Now we think that after this 1 year of holy artisan attack, we confidently can say that it is not possible on the part of these terrorists to carry out any large-scale attack in this country like holy artisan.
That would be a fantastic achievement on part of the security forces of Bangladesh. But we've also learned since the July attack last year that many youths have disappeared from their homes at different times. They've either happened before the attack or even afterwards, as some of the law enforcement agencies have shared with us. Now, how concerning are these disappearances of these youths?
Well, as a part of their strategy, some terrorists motivated some youths to leave their house and to join them. So a significant number of youths who left their house before holy artisan attack and joined this group. And most of them are already identified. Now those who left house before holy artisan attack, most of them are either killed in action or they have been arrested, or some of them have come back.
Now, some human rights organizations as well as families complain that their family members or dear ones have been picked up by plainclothes men identifying themselves as members of security forces. Have the police investigated into these disappearances?
It depends on case to case. If you can specify any case, then I can answer, because every case is different.
Yasin Talukdar, his family members said that he was picked up by security men, and since then the law enforcement has denied his being with any of the security forces. The British High Commission has also mentioned that he is in custody of Bangladesh's security forces, but no whereabouts have been known since. We have also learned about some recent cases, for instance, Imam Hussain, and a youth who disappeared on June 3 as a latest case.
In every case in which we get complaint from the relatives or parents of disappeared youth, we investigate it, we inquire into it. So the case of Yasin Talukdar is under investigation, and the youth who disappeared in June, on 3rd June. This case is also under investigation. We are trying to identify his hideouts and whereabouts. In the case of Nibras Islam, it was also reported that somebody picked him, but later it was proved that nobody picked him. No member of law enforcement agency picked him. Rather, he left the house to join this Neo JMB group. So it depends on different cases.
All right, that of course was Saad Amadi talking there in that exclusive interview. Let me now go to Shantanu Mukherjee standing by. Shantanu, let's also talk about the situation in Bangladesh as it relates to security. ISIS quickly jumped in and claimed responsibility. A year later, there are many terror outfits and organizations still operating there. Is this really homegrown terror? Are more people getting inspired there, or do we have more of a presence from other organizations that are sort of infiltrating into the area? What do you think?
Well, judging by the history of Bangladesh, there has been a spurt of, I would not say the cases of terror, but in case of the rise of spiraling cases of fundamentalism. And some outfits, as you mentioned, like one is Hifazat-e-Islam, which has not come to notice for striking terror, but definitely fomenting the jihadi forces there and trying to bring in the extreme form of Islam, which is not accepted by Bangladesh, into the society. And I'm afraid if this is allowed to flourish, it will breed terror. Similarly, The JMB was suspected to be kidnapping. I do not know the cases for recruitment, induction and training, etc. A very hawkish eye has to be kept, sharp eyes, so that it is not too late. JMB is old, I think since 1998, and it continues to be a force to reckon with, and it has the veterans who had fought with the Taliban cadres in Afghanistan, and they are the trainers in the sense that they are all in the handling of weapons, etc. So these two organizations are there, and some external forces, some external country, the hostile, who want to foment terror there, needs to be put under surveillance there. I mean, whatever the police, the technical know-how and everything, the interceptions and the signal intelligence, because you have to prevent it, number one. Number two, Bangladesh security forces, which is doing its best and doing a good job, must be seen to be doing, must be in public view to instill confidence. And on the other hand, they have to be oriented for de-radicalization. And I must warn now you say a figure of 140 who have disappeared, the figure could vary. It is a gray area. And now with the ISIS, as the reports come in after Mosul falling and Tikrit and all, there might be many fighters who have gone there, may return. Now we have to keep an eye not only to stop fresh induction into the cadres, but when they return, they add muscle to the existing problem, and they will have experience. They are battle hardened. So that has to be kept in mind, and it should be nipped in the bud.
All right, let me go over really quickly to Shafkat Munir as we wrap this up. You know, the bakery there opened a few months ago, the venue of the deadly attack last year opening up in January. You know, what is the mood like there on the ground? You know, is there still that sense of fear? What is it like in Dhaka given the anniversary? You know, is there a sort of some relief of hope? What's it like? Give us a perception.
I think the mood is a mixture of hope, relief, and also defiance that yes, this is a very sad day for Bangladesh, as Mr. Hamadi also reported about the reactions from the ground. But it is also one of defiance that we will not let this happen again. This is also one of relief because although we have had several attacks since the attack on Holy Bakery on 1st of July 2016, but none of those attacks have been of the same scale or have had the same number of casualties. I think what we really need to do now is look forward, address some of the core issues, look at the issue of radicalization, formulate a proper narrative which we can then circulate, and ensure that such a tragedy doesn't visit Bangladesh again in future.
All right, unfortunately, we are out of time for the discussion, but we want to take a quick moment to thank all of our guests, Shafkat, Shantanu, as well as thank you for your perspective. Certainly a sad and somber note 1 year later since the deadly attack in Bangladesh. Lots of interesting perceptions and conversations on this topic. That does it for this special broadcast. I'm Archit Seshadri. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you soon.